good seeing all of you. It's a lot of new faces here and a lot of old friends. And that's just kind of the nature of the way this group works. You know, the only real consistent thing here is me. You know, I'm sitting in this spot every Monday, and I see new faces, and I see old friends, and I can always count on change. You know, it's never a set group of people. I never really know who's going to be here. Sometimes there's a room full of people. Sometimes there's 4 people. And you just never know. And that's just kind of the nature of existence, isn't it? It's constantly changing nature of life. And that's exactly what we want to talk about tonight, is this word anicca, or impermanence, change. You hear that the only thing we can really count on is change. And that's accurate. The only consistent thing is the fact that things are almost always completely inconsistent, right? So this quality of impermanence flows through every facet of our existence. It's one of the 3 characteristics of our existence. The characteristics of our existence are anicca, this impermanent nature; anatta, which is this nature of non-self, which is actually dependently arising because of this level of change that we experience; and dukkha, which generally is translated as suffering, stress. These are the 3 characteristics of our existence, that it's impermanent, imperfect, and impersonal, right? And so tonight I want to talk about this quality of impermanence, this anicca. And I would like to talk about why it's an important thing to know experientially, and how it can lead to our liberation, and how we can get there to liberation, that is, in case I wasn't clear. So I grew up going to a lot of funerals. I don't know why my grandmother felt the need to drag me as a very small child to every funeral that she had to go to. But I went to a lot of them, like far too many for a small child. So impermanence was nothing really new to me. You know, like I saw death from a very early age. But it wasn't really, I didn't know the impermanent nature of life itself. I could go to funerals and I could intellectualize it and be like, oh yeah, people die. But when I was 13, I was diagnosed with acute myelogenous leukemia and had a 30% chance of survival. And impermanence kind of slapped me in the face. It was very clear to me that life is not permanent. Like I said, I had a 30% chance of living. Obviously, I fell into that 30% chance because I'm here, which is awesome. Hooray, go me. But it was pretty dauntingly and glaringly clear to me at that point how impermanent this life is, and how impermanent all things are. 2 years after that, after my diagnosis, I found my grandmother, who was my main caregiver growing up. I found her dead when I was 15. And so impermanence strikes again, came to visit. And a few years after that, I lost my dad. So, as I said, no stranger to impermanence. And that is the nature of things. This life is impermanent. All things are impermanent. Everything from exterior physical objects, this hat is falling apart, as you can see. It will no longer be with us for in a very short amount of time. Our thoughts are impermanent. Our feelings, impermanent. This body is impermanent. Not in the sense of death, but also in the sense of it's constantly changing, cells regenerating. We'll lose jobs. We'll lose friendships. We'll lose our lives and everything in between. Everything has this quality to it. Impermanence is the natural law. Everything arises only to pass away. And when we're resistant to this change, when we're resistant to this natural characteristic of life, that things do change, that things are impermanent, when we don't accept that, that creates this layer of suffering for us, right? We can look at the Four Noble Truths for that. We can see that the first noble truth is that in life, there is this quality of suffering. And we're told that suffering is caused by craving, clinging, and attachment. So there's this clinging and attachment that we develop because we hold dear, we hold close what we love. And so when we lose that, or that leaves us, it gives us this opportunity for either suffering or for growth. So if we want to stop our suffering, it seems like we really only have two options, right? Either we stop craving things altogether, we don't want anything, we don't make any new friends, we basically sit in solitary and we don't leave the house and do anything. Or we have to change our relationship to our suffering and to the things that we hold dear. It's kind of funny. The Buddha was he said, good luck if you have kids attaining awakening, because of the level of attachment that we hold to our children. In fact, this is really funny, actually. So the Buddha named his son Rahula. In Pali, Rahula means fetter. So basically the Buddha named his son Handcuffs, right? Which I think is just really funny. And, it should be noted that, when the Buddha set out for his awakening, after encountering these heavenly messengers, that Rahula was an infant, and the Buddha didn't return for 7 years. A lot of people kind of have a problem with that. They're like, oh, he bailed on his kid. I feel like the Buddha left because he felt like he didn't have really anything to offer his child at that point. He had grown up in this lavish luxury, and he didn't know much of the world. But when he learned about the world, he returned to little handcuffs. But so there's this quality of letting go and this quality of renunciation within this practice. And that's really where we need to be, right? We need to stop our tendencies towards clinging and attachment. I'm not saying don't want things, but we need to change our relationship to the way we hold on to them. So how do we do that? By getting to know this impermanence directly, and we do that through our meditation practice. If you've been here for a while, I've been teaching Vipassana, or insight practice. And within this practice, we observe the sensations of the body. We observe the arisings of the sensations and the passing of the sensation. And it gives us this window into the impermanent nature of all things. We observe the rising and falling of the breath, impermanent. Any sensation that arises, if given enough time, will pass. And so Vipassana, it literally means insight. It's an insight practice. And the insight that we gain is the insight into this impermanent nature. And it's the insight into these three characteristics that I described. And so by sitting and observing the sensations of the body arise and observing the sensations of the body pass, we get to know impermanence on an experiential level by observing it, by watching it arise, watching it pass. When you're sitting in meditation, you're like, oh, my leg's falling asleep. And then you kind of move it just slightly and it goes away and you're like, oh, okay. Or if you have that itch, that's one of the big things that got me early in my practice was my face would start to itch and it would drive me absolutely crazy. But if given enough time, that sensation passes away. It goes away. Just like all things do. Everything arises only to pass away. And so by seeing this impermanent nature, by getting insight into this impermanent nature, we can learn to let go. We can learn to hold things with love and care, but not cling to them, because we know that this too shall pass. And impermanence isn't always our enemy. There's times when impermanence is our friend. When that one person you really don't like just is like right next to you, and you're like, oh God, I wish this person would just go away. And they finally do it, and you're like, oh, thank God. I couldn't take that person for like another 5 minutes. Or, in the case of sickness, when you get better, it's impermanence. The sickness was impermanent. So impermanence isn't always necessarily our enemy, right? It can be our friend as well. And it is the doorway to our awakening. It's the doorway to our liberation. The third noble truth, is that suffering ceases when we learn to let go. And we learn to let go when we discover this impermanent nature, when we really experience it. Not just hear about it, but really experience it for ourselves. Observing this arising and passing. It's the direct experience of this arising and passing that is our ticket to our liberation. So Ledi Sayadaw, Ledi, not Lady, he was a meditation, like a Burmese meditation master in the early 20th century, and a Buddhist scholar, a really dedicated practitioner. And he said that not seeing arising and passing is ignorance, while seeing all phenomena as impermanent is the doorway to all the stages to insight and awakening. There it is right there, impermanence and observing impermanence, experiencing it for ourselves is the doorway to our awakening. It's by seeing the impermanent nature that we can begin to change our relationship to our experience. So rather than being resistant to change and loss, we see it as the natural flow of things. It is what it is. Everything arises, everything passes away. All things that begin must end. Birth only results in death. And it's the natural law. If we want to wake up, we have to learn to let go. And it's the only way to end our suffering. It's by learning to let go. So instead of pushing away from life and the pain inherent within it, we learn to embrace it without clinging to it. We experience the good times, and we experience them and we enjoy them without clinging to them. And we learn to embrace our pain rather than push away from it. Rather than being averse to our pain, we learn to hold it. Does anybody remember that movie Frozen, right? Anybody remember this song? Yeah, let it go, right? Anybody remember the character's name? Elsa. E-L-S-A. So we learn to embrace the suffering, let go of our reactivity, we see the awakening, and we adhere to the path. Right? So take that one home with you. Ajahn Chah was quoted as saying, if we learn to let go a little, then we get a little bit of freedom. If we learn to let go a lot, we get a lot of freedom. If we learn to let go completely, then we're free. And I want to be free. I don't know about you guys, but I want some freedom in my life. I want freedom from suffering. I've suffered enough. So you can see why this is such an important teaching, and why this quality of Anicca runs through everything, and how experiencing it directly, we can make friends with it. And we know how to do that through our meditation practice, by observing the sensations of the body, observing the arising and the passing. And now you know how that this itself can lead to your liberation, by observing the arising and passing and learning to let go. So I hope that something in that talk landed for you. I hope that something was beneficial. And if it wasn't, well, you'll have to just let go of that too. But anyway, when Aaron gets back, we'll go ahead and get ready for our second practice. It's going to be a 30-minute guided practice, Vipassana.